Welcome to Wildlife Outdoors with your host, Russell and Jose. If you have a passion for conservation of the outdoors, or you're enjoying a calming hike in the mountains, an exhilarating kayak trip on the river, feeling a fish on the end of your line, cooking on an open flame in a primitive campsite, or stalking big game, just waiting for the perfect shot, you're in the right place. So put on your boots and polarized sunglasses and come along for the ride.
Welcome back to another episode of Wildlife Outdoors. Got another exciting one for you today. Today we have a guide from South Texas, Saltwater fly fishing guide. He's a small business owner and a passionate photographer. So welcome, Jerid Doering. How you doing, man?
Hanging in there. It's been a long week.
It's only halfway through. What do you mean it's been long?
Yeah, I know. It's already been kind of a long week. Yeah. Weather changes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of that here in Arkansas. Like we said before, we actually started recording. We got down to 40 last night, and so
that's
I'm really enjoying the weather change.
Yeah. I think it actually was 50 something when I woke up, and then 60. I think it only got to like 68 today, so maybe 70.
Hey, that's not bad at all.
Pretty cool for the coast.
Especially getting that salt breeze.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
for sure.
So, man, I appreciate you reaching out and asking to hop on an episode. It's not very often that we have people reaching out to us, so that makes it easier. But yeah, I looked through your page whenever you reached out, and I was like, dude, this guy is like freaking awesome. And that boat, man, you got to give us the backstory on that boat.
Okay. So I wanted a skiff, and I had bought a spider from a local guide, Jeff.
Mhm.
And it was like pulling a Winnebago. I mean, it worked. It was a great intro boat. It was like pulling two dead bodies in the wind. Like, it just was terrible, but it got me to where I was going. It got me learning the flats. And I said, okay, I need to buy a boat that I'm going to guide out of, or at least start out of. And I started looking at boats, and it was like, this is crazy. I mean, you could buy a Chittum for $120,000, and you're sitting on grandma's hemorrhoid cushion with a like stiff backrest. And I'm like, you pay $800 and you get grandma's hemorrhoid cushion? Like, that's not what I want my clients to sit on. Like, I was just kind of unenamored with how much these skiffs cost and the comforts that they allowed. I think Drake was actually my favorite, and I probably am going to buy a Drake. I really love their fit and finish. I think they make a really nice boat all the way around, and they hide a lot of their accents, so the carbon fiber's underneath. You can't really see it, and I really like that. We're not trying to brag that we're carbon fiber that's real subtle, and I like that. But
Yeah.
so I looked at plans and researched for a couple years, and I found this plan for the Laguna Madre 18 on boatbuildercentral.com. I reached out to him, kind of just BS with him about the plan. I definitely wanted to go with the tunnel. They had a kind of a one-off tunnel design that I had some questions about. And I had a buddy that owns a commercial real estate or a commercial building down here in Aransas. And I said, hey, you mind if I build the boat out there? And he said, no problem. So I bought the plans and started. And let me tell you, that's an undertaking. It took me about 10 months. I worked on it almost every day. A lot of it was just not knowing. I think if I built one again, I'd be twice as fast, because a lot of it was just like, how do I even put this? Because they give you the plans and you make the hole, and then everything else is just kind of a free for all. Like, where you want your bulkheads, how big of I stole the idea from new water boats. They have a huge front locker, and I wanted to copy that. So I brought my bulkhead way back so I could make a huge front locker. I built my own bench seat out of carbon Kevlar tubing that I made I made a jig with pool noodles and then slid carbon Kevlar weave tubing over it, and was able to build a whole bench setup that I had some sliding seats on. So I have orthopedic Tempest flip up seats, super, super comfortable, and then storage underneath. I stole that from East Cape. East Cape has a Black Fly Lodge boat that is aluminum, but it's got the bench, and they did that for clients coming in that just had the one suitcase, for coming in and fishing. They could store it underneath. I really like that, because most of the time in skiffs, storage you're putting in the gunnels and it's just a mess most of the time when you have 3 guys in a skiff. And so having that storage underneath the seat and then having very comfortable seats. But all that's your own design. So it's like scratching your head going, oh, what do I want? Like, how's this going to play out? Like, how does this work? So a lot of the interior design of the boat took a long time. So I probably could do one in, and I went way and above. Went over the top. The bottom you spend the most time on because it's the first thing you build. And it means the most useless. Like, you could screw up the bottom and make it look terrible. No one's ever going to see it. But I was like, how to make sure it's smooth and flat. And then you flip the boat and you never see it again. You're like, that was stupid. I spent 2 months on the bottom. I could have just done away with that, And so if I did it again, I could definitely be a lot faster. I probably made it heavier than it needed to be too. I went with the larger motor. I painted it. I used very expensive paint. I doubled the budget because I kept going, oh, if I'm going to do it, what's another $3,000? And I kept saying that. What's another $2,000? What's another $1,500? And, eventually you're like, where's my money? But
So that was the first boat that you've ever built?
Yeah, I did a real Frankenstein backwoods redneck John boat that I took a jet ski motor and I slapped it in the John boat. We zipped around in that in the saltwater and shit when I was about 10 years ago. And then I used to live in Hawaii and I surfed almost every day and you ding your boards all the time. And I just got tired of paying somebody some handies. So I just learned a lot of my fiberglass work, working on surfboards and dealing with different resins and things like that. So jumping to the boat wasn't huge because I'd done some work off and on with other things as well. But if you didn't have some fiberglass experience, it would be quite the hurdle to overcome.
Yeah. I can imagine.
That was the easiest part really for me. So, but yeah, 10 months and lots of money. But man, does it scoot. I mean, that thing gets up in 5 inches, 4 inches, and I can travel in 2. I mean, I've gone over dry land. Boom, 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 boom. And it's an incredible boat. It just, for the flats, it's about as good as it gets. And I paid, half of what it would cost for a brand new skiff. Less than half.
It sounds like, a lot of time, a lot of effort went into it, like a labor of love for sure. So what was it that drove you to go that route versus maybe buying one as close to what you were wanting to get and then customizing it from there? Were you wanting to try and like really make it your own, or like maybe you like, something from this manufacturer, something for that manufacturer, and you want to just go all out, or was it to save money? Like, what was, I guess, the catalyst for taking on that massive project?
I have a do-it-myself disease. Unfortunately, it runs in my family. My dad's got it bad, real bad. A lot of that, I just couldn't find one skiff that you could customize to get. So it was a sacrifice, right? So I'll spend, $70,000 on a skiff. And I may get to design 1 or 2 things that I think are going to work, but there's still going to be 2 or 3 things on the boat that I'm like, I hate this. Like, I don't like that you sit down in the back and you got nothing to sit. I'm 6'5", so I don't like stand for hours on end. That just doesn't work for me. So I have a pedestal seat right behind my center console that has a cushion on it that I sit on. Like, I don't understand how that's not like a standard. Most skiffs, you either stand or you got to sit way back on grandma's hemorrhoid cushion again, and you got the steering wheel here, and it's like either that or you have to stand up the whole time. And running a flat skiff, you have to stand up to see. So it was just little things like that it was like, if I'm going to spend all this time in this boat, I want it to be the way I want it to be. I want clients to be able to experience what they want it to be, and I don't want to spend all this extra money trying to get it there when I know I can do it myself and get the performance that I need. So there isn't a ton of boats out there that can do what mine can on a consistent basis as far as shallow. And I don't think you need it really, but it is nice to be able to just go, yeah, I'm going right there and don't care. I'm going to make it. I can get up in anything. So I was a little bit of do it yourself and a little bit, if I'm going to take this on, I want clients, friends, myself to be comfortable. I want it to be exactly the way I want it to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how often do you get up in like 2 inches of water? Are you catching many fish? Or are you just doing that mainly
I
just to
can't
get
get
to
up in
another spot?
2. I think my best time I've gotten up has been with 2 guys in the boat, not 3, and I think I was about my ass was hitting the bottom, so it was about 4.5, 5 inches. Like, I can get
I
up.
see.
With 3 guys, it's about 5.5. I only lose about a half inch if I got another guy in the boat. But yeah, I get up
I
a
see.
lot. I mean, I'm getting back in there, especially at low tides. Tides are dropping out. I'm not scared of being way back in the back lakes. There's a lot of fish back there, man. A lot.
Yeah.
So
Dude,
it's
that's
nice to
one thing
be.
that I've seen a lot of people fishing in like South Carolina and stuff, fishing flood tides. And you always hear them saying, "Oh, well, it's outgoing tide. Like we got to go. Or we're gonna get stuck." And dude, but when they're back there, like there's just freaking so many fish. And I've never fished a flood tide before. That's something that I need to get down there and do. But dude, they're normally stacked in there. And then you hear them, "Oh, well, it's outgoing tide, so we got to go. Doesn't matter how many fish are back here." I'm like, that sucks. So it sounds like you
But their
don't have
tide exchange
too much
is
of an issue with that.
massive. I mean, those
Yeah.
guys will have a 4-foot tide exchange versus us is like inches.
Oh, really? It's that much of a difference?
Yeah, they have a big tide exchange. Yeah, on the coast there.
I see. I didn't know that. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, ocean compared to Gulf makes a big difference.
Yep. We can have days where if the
Yep.
wind blows hard enough, the tide won't exchange down here.
That's insane. So I know you have a past, guiding for steelhead and salmon and stuff like that. So what's the difference between guiding for those fish and guiding for redfish in terms of clientele? Do you get different kinds of people that are trying to go on those trips, or is
Yeah.
it the same people?
Well, it's the same difference that you have here as far as I wasn't always fly fishing. I gear fished most of my life for salmon and steelhead. And I swung, we call it swinging flies for steelhead when you're swinging flies in a river for steelhead and salmon. I did that. I've been to Montana fly fishing. I never really got the fly fishing bug, so to speak, full time until I caught my first redfish when I first moved to Rockport. But I did
see.
do it. I would probably only ever fish fly in Wyoming, Idaho, and all that. I really enjoy doing that. But it was really catching the bug down here. The difference is the same difference you have from gear fishermen down here. There's the bait fishermen, then you got your gear tossers, and then your fly fishermen. It's kind of the evolution of the fishermen. And it's the same out there, the bait fishermen, kill, limits. Oh, you get him today, we got to kill him. And then you got gear fishermen that are looking for a little more sport. They do want to catch a couple fish. They're tossing, paddle tails. They like the interaction of like casting and actually searching and hunting for fish. But they'll still be pretty disappointed if they don't hook one, which rightly so. When you're casting paddle tails, you're covering water. You should be getting them. And then you got basically the full evolution. When you're a fly fisherman, you don't give a crap if you catch one. You're just out there enjoying your time away from the kids, away from life. And, you spend all this time trying to work on your casting. And even if you can just put a couple casts in front of the fish, maybe you see a dozen of them, you're happy. You're like, this is great. It was a great trip. So it's just kind of a different mentality of each person that picks up a different type of gear essentially falls into sort of a category. It's the same, I think, in Washington or Oregon or, as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've never been fishing for steelhead or salmon, and I feel like if I were to do that, I would probably be okay using gear. Like I don't use gear very often. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I used gear. I'm basically fly or die, but going and trying something like that, I would probably break down and use some gear if I'm not catching them on the fly, just because I want to catch a steelhead so damn bad.
Well, steelhead are real easy to catch. They're just a little harder to find. And I've got a couple rivers there that you don't need gear. I'll just point. I'll be like, he's right there. And you just swing your fly out there. You'll get him. Yeah.
Well, let's make it happen.
Yeah, we could do that for sure. I'm going late January, early February. I'm taking probably a week and a half to go. My boat's there. All my gear's there. So we can go do
Oh,
that
that's
if we want
awesome.
to, but I spent a lifetime catching those things, so I can go find them on pretty much any river. But there was a couple rivers that I fished enough that they like the same rocks, same breaks, same kind of drops, same kind of stuff. So every year you find them in relatively the same spots. And so they're pretty easy to predict on. Once it rains and the water comes
see.
up and it starts dropping, it gets pretty easy to catch them.
That makes sense. So was it? Did you have a little bit of a learning curve whenever you moved down to Rockport area and started trying to
Or
catch saltwater?
I was like in a field at Jurassic Park. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I was so lost. I mean, I fished salmon sea my whole life. It's very involved to get good at catching those fish, which it gave me a lot of scaffolding because it's the same type of stuff, behaviors. What do they eat? Why are they going here? Tides. How does the moon affect them? You use all the same spreadsheet essentially that you will for any species of fish, and you just have to come down and go out and start applying it. So it was hard because I'm not used to a 100% predatory fish. Steelhead and salmon. Steelhead will eat in the river. Salmon do not, for the most part. They're on a one-track mission to go die. So they're not really. They'll eat out in the saltwater, and tricking them out there is just trolling bait. It's pretty easy. But once they hit the rivers, it's a totally different ballgame. So switching to a fish that is completely 100% predatory and just getting those things down, it was difficult. I was frustrated a lot, but I just kept going out. I think my first polling skiff was a family friend, Uncle Brian. He towed his boat down from Milwaukee. It was like this old Lund, and he had welded on a polling platform on the back because he wanted to come down and use it. He stayed down here, and he just said, "Hey, you take the scow. Go ahead, use it, whatever you want." So I had closet poles that I'd put PVC on, and I was standing up there with closet poles and just going, "Where are these fish? Like, what? Lighthouse? What's that?" And I'm like pulling around. It had a long shaft on it, so if you pulled in, you pulled out. You weren't getting anywhere with that thing. So it was, it was very difficult. It was basically learning a whole new fishery from scratch. And then, I didn't know a lot of fly fish. I didn't know anybody down here when I moved except one person in San Antonio. So I just had to go out, kind of do it on my own and start making friends. I think that was the hardest part. Was the community can be a little cliquey. And I think I got this impression that everybody thought I was like this new fisherman that hadn't really like picked up a rod, because I got shut down all the time. I'm like, "Hey, let's go fish. Like, let's go. I know the drill. Like, I've been through this, and I don't know if I have the time," and blah, blah. I'm like, what? It's got kind of a weird vibe from a lot of people. And until I started catching fish. And of course, I'm a photographer too. So I started taking pictures and like, oh, you fish. Oh, okay. Yeah, we can go fish. And I'm like, yeah, now it comes out. Okay. But I think that's anywhere.
Yeah.
People are pretty cliquey. They don't really want new people coming in. So that was a little bit. But once I got to know everybody, I mean, Chris Fowler down here is great at the ply shop there. And there's a bunch of other really nice guys out here. So once I got to know them, it all kind of ironed out.
Yeah. It's just infiltrating that circle. It can be a little difficult, huh?
Infiltrating is the word. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of faced a little bit of that when I moved to Arkansas in terms of being in a whole new thing, because I think I'd fished. I maybe not have even fished for trout when I moved to Arkansas. I think maybe one time Jose and I went to the Guad before I moved up here. So I'd never fished for trout before. And I come up here and it was probably, I don't know, maybe close to a year before I caught my first trout. And that's with stupid stalker trout at that. Like, I mean, granted, I don't get to fish very often, maybe once every couple weeks.
Well, you gotta be a darn entomologist to trout fish. I mean, you got to know every bug,
it's
every
definitely a learning
life
curve
cycle.
for sure.
And they start rattling stuff off. I'm like, do you teach at the college? Like, how do you know this stuff?
Right?
Yeah. Let me
Yeah,
get my books, my notes. Hold on. Keep talking.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I can say that is true for, if you're fishing, wild trout, but if you're fishing stalkers, throw a damn egg pattern on, you're going to catch something. You just got to know where they're
The
at.
squirmy
That was
worm
my
every
issue.
time.
Is like, right, a San Juan or a squirmy wormy or an egg pattern, you'll be all right.
Yep.
And Jose's actually had luck catching them on woolly buggers. I think I've only caught 2 trout on woolly buggers before. I don't know why. I can't seem to catch a trout on a freaking streamer. But yeah, it was quite a bit of a learning curve. It was probably 6 weeks that I lived here before I caught my first fish in general. And it was just some type of sunfish. Like, I don't know. It was just a whole thing trying to learn. I couldn't imagine going from steelhead to saltwater though. Like, that's way different. So
it was frustrating at times too, because I'm so used, and I liked it because I was an expert. And it was cool to go back to being a novice again, because it really makes you appreciate all the steps you took to become an expert. And I had nothing really much to learn anymore about salmon and steelhead fishing. I've been doing it for 25 years. I can catch them anywhere. And it was cool to have to figure stuff out again. I really enjoyed that. It was painful, but it was also like, this is kind of neat. Like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to throw. And like, well, how do I get to know this stuff? How do I break this down? And it was weird too, because there's a lot of online. Of course, you can go online, but there really isn't like a lot of great. I mean, Salt Strong has now kind of come out with a bunch of stuff, but when I was first fishing, it was so random because St. Charles, South Carolina fish aren't the Gulf fish. Louisiana fish aren't Texas fish. Like, it's a totally different kind of. There are some similarities, but it's definitely geographically specific, and there just wasn't a ton of. They're like, yeah, this fly will work most of the time, and it's like, well, why? Why does that work? What is it supposed to replicate? And they were kind of fuzzy on that, so it was like, all right. And then you start tossing stuff, and it works, and you're like, why do they eat this? Like, this is the strangest fly I've ever seen, but they eat it, they love it. And then starting to get, there was a big breakthrough when my buddy was working at an oyster farm. And he started sending me pictures of the crabs and the things coming off the oyster bags. And now some of the crabs that I threw that were so outlandish started making a lot more sense. And then we started seeing fiddler crabs and all these things. I just really pay attention. I'm on the bank, when I'm on the flats. We've been, seeing spider crabs on the flats clinging to the grass, and little fish, when you sit down at the sandbar and put your chair out, little fish come up, and there's gobies, and there's just. It really took me looking at everything each time I pull through an ecosystem. It's like, what would you toss that lives in this ecosystem that they're going to eat, or try and attempt to eat? And then when you see refusals, why? Like, why did that fish refuse a perfectly presented crab? He should just smash that thing. It was real hard. It's long curve understanding that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. So is that something where you just started, like, do you tie your own flies and you're trying to essentially match a hatch, or
Oh,
were you
yeah.
just going to different shops and
Oh, yeah.
buying flies?
Oh, yeah. I got my whole station right here.
Nice.
Yeah. So we do fly tie night every Tuesday at my house. And then I tie up a bunch just to have, but we do a couple different types of fishing. So going to snook, tarpon. I'm starting to tie some steelhead flies for when I get back in January. And every species has a little bit different tie. And it's, the more you tie, the better you get at it. So it's nice to just keep tying once or twice a week just to develop that mastery on different techniques. And you definitely speed up a lot as you get some of these techniques down on tying these flies. So I enjoyed it. It's the art of it. I really enjoy it. So
now I'd like to kick it to today's sponsor, Foretold Coffee Company. Elevate your outdoor adventures with Foretold Coffee's premium single origin coffees, meticulously roasted to satisfy both specialty coffee professionals and nature enthusiasts alike. Founded by former airborne cavalry scout Joshua Sandoval, his mission is to bring the mountains home with every cup. Experience their 3 flavors, Peruvian cocoa, El Salvadoran bourbon, and Mexican honey, which is my favorite. So check them out at foretoldcoffeeco.com.
One thing I've been kind of curious, because I spent a little bit of time near the Texas coast. I used to go to school in Kingsville, so my buddies and I would go to Port A or Baffin Bay and go fish a lot out there. This was, at the time, it was all conventional. I didn't really get into fly fishing until about 17, maybe, like really more into it. Saltwater fly fishing more recently, probably within the last 2 or 3 years. And I hesitate to even say that just because I don't do it frequently. But like, one thing I've been kind of curious is because when you go to Academy or Bass Pro or Cabela's, whatever, or Roy's and Corpus, there's just a massive selection of lures for conventional fishermen of all sizes. I mean, all kinds of colors. You get like these, just pure like chartreuse. You get what's like electric chicken with like they lime in the pink, and you get all kinds of crazy looking ones. But then I noticed, like with fly fishermen, they always say, got to match the hatch. And I think like for trout specifically, because like you mentioned before, all the life cycles, they're keying in at any point in time on something like very specific. But I mean, I've caught redfish on some, crazy stuff that folks might not think, would work really. But even bass, like, and I feel like it's a lot of times it's a predatory fish. You can get like a reaction, or maybe they're a little bit more keyed in on something. So I guess where I'm trying to go with this is like when you're tying a fly or when you're out fishing, is matching the hatch really that like more important, or is it just just maybe if it doesn't even matter what you throw that day because they're just eating anything and everything. It's all about presentation. Like
Hey,
what, in your opinion, like what I guess I guess what I'm trying to say, sorry for the long way or long roundabout, is match to that's really all that is cracked up to be when it comes to saltwater fishing, or I guess for predatory fish in general.
well, a couple different caveats there. One, I would say I have more luck blind casting with crazy stuff than I ever do with crazy stuff sight casting. So I think when you're casting in the shallows, those redfish are not stupid. They know the boat's there. I don't think that they have a ton of natural predators on flats. So their annoyance level varies depending on the day they're having, the tides, their appetite, blah, blah, blah. So they always know that you're there. So I think I stole this from Brian Barrera in South Padre for tarpon. He goes, it's easier to feed him than it is to fool him. So getting something that's like supernatural that looks pretty real, but has the movement, I think combined with presentation in real shallow flat scenarios, I think is your best bet to elicit a strike, because they're already it's very rare that and it does happen, but it's rare that you pull up and a fish is nose down facing away from the boat. He has no idea the boat's there. That fish will eat anything. I mean, doesn't matter what you have. As long as you plop in front of his face and give it a little strip, he's going to smoke it. But if you have any kind of fish paying attention whatsoever, he knows you're there 30 feet before you probably even get there. It's just whether he's going to be worried about it until you get right on him. So I think presentation is more important than colors often enough, especially in clear water. I mean, there's a couple guys down here, all they throw is like chartreuse and white the whole year. What's his face throws we call it the blind chicken. He throws this just kind of looks shrimpy, and he probably fishes it, with long strips like a shrimp swimming. So they're also garbage dumpsters. I mean, on the right days, they eat anything. I've thrown my fly overboard from my hand, thrown it, and just twitched my rod and caught one right so close to the boat. Those dumb days, I think, water temperature combined with tides make them stupid, and they're just garbaging everything. But I think on the whole, and especially as we approach, fall into the colder temperatures of winter, trying to fool them with something very natural is going to, I think, be a little more advantageous than throwing random stuff. But on the conventional side, when you're throwing paddle tails, I mean, your paddle is like, or spinners or spoons or whatever, it's making that thumping noise, and that, is bouncing off their lateral line and all their sensors. So even though it might be some crazy color, that thump of that tail moving is what's telling that fish that that's something I could eat. So I think in conventional stuff, you can get away with a lot more craziness because some of the things you're doing is mimicking a fish in stress or dying, or something that elicits, the redfish knows is something it can eat, or the trout.
That is something that I never thought about. I never thought about because, like, I know that there's certain fly patterns that like piss a fish off. Like, I don't know if it's the same with steelhead and salmon, but like for brown trout and some bigger rainbows, if you're throwing a leech pattern, it's more of like a defensive thing because the leeches will eat the eggs, and so it's kind of like this animalistic protect my young type of thing, and they will hit a leech pattern so much harder than they will like a midge. So I knew stuff like that, but I never thought about the action or the thumping that conventional, lures would make in comparison to a fly, vibrating that lateral
Well,
lateral line. But that makes a hell of a lot more sense.
if you're on the flats enough, you'll see crabs swim, and they swim with one claw tight and one claw out, always. And when they swim in a straight line, and they swim steady. And a lot of guys, they'll throw their black crab, and I hate that term, but it's on my black crab, and they strip it like this, tiny little strips, and it's bouncing the crab like this. And crabs don't swim like that. So will it get hit? Yeah, absolutely. People catch fish all the time. But if you toss a crab, what you'll see on the reaction bites is what solved this for me was watching a fish eat that. When I strip a crab the proper way and it has the proper weight, and you're stripping it nice and slow like this, those fish don't charge it. They know it's not going anywhere. So they just come up and go, boop, and smoke it like a dry fly, like a trout on a dry fly. You don't see them charge it too often. And if they do, it's because it's close and they kind of look up and they go, oh yeah, mine. But when you're bouncing a fly or you're casting a fly that's doing all that erratic movement, they will always charge it because they think it's something that's going to get away. So when I started watching how these fish ate things, I was like, that fish knows that thing's not getting away. I've watched them literally just come up and just, and then come right back to the bottom and ate my fly. And it was like, why? But that fish knew instinctively that crab wasn't going anywhere. There's no way, because the other defense mechanism as a crab is they go straight to the bottom. So if you cast in front of a fish, let it sink right to the bottom and then start your strip, again, you're doing a natural thing that crab does. And so the redfish knows if that crab tries to go to the bottom, he's going to eat him anyway. So, and it's this far off the bottom, so he just comes up and just eats it like that. So that was really, for me, watching reactions of fish and how they react to different flies tells you what their instincts are telling them about what you're presenting. And then you can kind of think about that and adjust. When you see a redfish charge something real fast and try to inhale it, he thinks it's going to get away. So he's trying to, but he's committing a lot of energy to do that, a ton of energy. So he thinks that that's something he can actually catch, and he needs to catch it fast. And they'll do that a lot with shrimp patterns. When you're tossing shrimp patterns, or if you'll see them hit every now and then in the early morning, they'll hit a gurgler like that. They think it's going to hop and get out of the way. They'll smash it pretty good sometimes. So that was what convinced me kind of on that, as far as with flies and natural presentation colors and what mimicking.
I see. That makes sense. So you definitely have an advantage using something natural, but it's still obviously possible to catch them on unnatural colors. Similar with,
there's some days you can catch
trout.
them on tinfoil. True.
Dude, there are some days that fish are freaking stupid. I remember one time back when Jose and I were conventional fishermen, we were out fishing a pond in Buda, and I dipped at the time, and I was done with my little pouch, and I was like, I wonder if I catch something on this. Threw it out, immediately caught a catfish.
As soon as it hit the water, that was wild.
Yeah, I've caught them on gum, like all sorts of stuff.
I've caught steelhead on gummy worms. Yeah.
Really?
Gummy worms. Yeah, we put gummy worms on. Well, one of the main baits for steelhead out there, and we still to this day don't really understand why, but they eat pink worms. They love them. And I'm talking pink worms like 6 inches long, like big, fat pink worms. They love them. They love the color of bubble gum no matter what. But for whatever reason, they just hit those. So what we started doing was taking, like 4-inch pink worms, and in heavy current or riprap or, places where there was a lot of chop, you needed to get your jig down. So we would use jig heads and then slide the worms on the jig heads. And so one day we caught a couple steelhead, and you catch big steelhead on worms, big steelhead. We caught a couple fish, and I had stripped, my worm got all hammered and came off, and my buddy was really into gummy worms. He still is. And so he pulled gummy worms out of his pocket. He goes, you want to give it a shot? So let's do it. And so we put little gummy worms on. We caught 2 more fish just like that.
That's crazy. Dude, that would be me. I love
awesome.
gummy candy. I'd probably have gummy worms in my pocket too.
He's an addict. Yeah.
Got to try Twizzlers next.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise me.
Twizzlers are another thing that I like.
Steelhead are
Dude,
super
that's
curious.
awesome.
I've sat at the top of a big hole and watched a summer run steelhead come up, and he just saw some piece of wood floating down, and so he scurried over and he ate the piece of wood, and you see him kind of mouthing it, and then he spit it out. And then he looked down and he saw a crawdad, so he dove, smoked the crawdad. And so he was just cruising around looking for stuff, picking stuff up with his mouth all the time. They're super curious.
That's good to know. Man, I need to make it up there at some point. So you talked about a little bit about, some guys that that are out there, fishing for tarpon and snook and stuff like that. So what are all the species that you target with your service?
Mostly reds, black drum, an oddball trout. In the wintertime, they can get up pretty shallow. We can get some shots on them. I typically don't unless a client really wants to go search for them. I'm not versed well in, because trout typically like deeper water, different structure than flats fishing for like redfish or black drum. If the this year has been really bad for it out here, but I can go out into the Gulf at Port Aransas and we'll fly fish for jack cavall out there as well, or whatever. I mean, you could catch a cobia, you catch, tarpon out there one day. It just depends. But jacks in the past have been out there, summertime to September, and they'll push bait to the surface. And so I'll run around in my boat. There they are. You run up to them, kill the motor, coast, fish to them, and you can catch jack crevalle. So, but mostly reds and black drum for the most part.
Nice. Dude, I was down in Port Aransas. Hell, I don't know. Maybe it was, when did I go down there, Jose? When I was with Vic. I don't remember when I was there, but I was there a few months back, and I took my kayak out from Port Aransas and went straight out, and I was just trying to see if I could see anything, and I got maybe 200 yards off the beach, and this huge school of jacks come up busting on a bait ball, and it was a little windy, a little choppy that day, and I was so freaking nervous. I don't think I've ever been shaking so hard in my life. And I was trying to get my fly out, and I'm like trying to stand and cast, and then my kayak starts turning and waves are coming, so I had to put my fly rod down and try to straighten out to face into the waves. And I got one cast off. By the time they dispersed, I didn't get to hook up, and I was just like, dude, it was so insane because I've never had such a big school busting like that in front of me. And then I was trying to get straightened out, and I still had my fly in the water. And I go to start, making my way back, and I was like, oh, there's some weight on my fly rod. So I set the hook, and it starts running. Kind of freaking gaff top. I was like, damn it.
Nice. Nice.
Got my hopes up. I thought it was a jack, but hey, it was a nice size gaff top, so it kind of worked out. But yeah, dude, I've always wanted to catch a jack out there on the fly.
It's a hoot. I mean, they're basically a GT. I mean, they're fast. And they don't give a shit about anything, man. They are just bullies. You be tossing. I mean, once we get to a school, I just have people cast and go strip it as fast as you can. You ain't going to get away from them. And they usually eat it within 10 feet of the boat. You watch them just run your butthole like just. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And then you got to do the line clearing, and you usually have your helper there trying to get you untangled, and lines flying up your reel and dab.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Dude,
so cool.
Getting the line cleared is so the first big fish that I ever caught was it was like a 50-something inch redfish. Prior to that, and that was down in Venice, Louisiana. Probably about 30 minutes prior to that, I hooked into one that was bigger than the one that I actually landed. And I didn't know that they would take off like that. And so I'm trying to clear a line, and I ended up dropping my rod. I was on the casting platform, dropped it, and it fell into the water. I jumped off the platform, grabbed my rod. Line was wrapped around the reel. She took off, and I broke her off. But dude, I was so freaking nervous. I had no clue what I was doing. And the second that she took, my mind wasn't thinking. I didn't get the line cleared, and it was done from there. But the next time I got the opportunity, I actually landed it because you have to have it in your mind on what you need to do when you hook up. And I had no clue what I was doing, and it was horrible. I would have loved to land that first fish, but still 50 inch plus. You can't complain too much. So
50 inches, that's a benchmark there. 50 is a benchmark.
Dude, it's like my first fish is always massive.
Oh, you're reeling.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. My first fish of any species is I spoil myself, and then I don't ever get a PB after that, unfortunately. It's happened with redfish. It's happened with Rio Grande cichlids. It's happened with cutthroat. It's happened with brown trout. What are some other firsts that I've caught that were massive? I don't remember. Yeah, my first. Well, I've actually beat that carp, but that's just because they're all about that size out here. But yeah, my first fish on a lot of species are just massive for what they are. But I'll get out there and get another big one someday.
That's good.
Yeah,
I've got a buddy. I was teaching how to steelhead fish a bunch of years back, and we went down to the river, and I said he had never caught one, and I said, okay, well, this river has a few steelhead in it. So we walk across the bridge, and I walk him up to the hole, and I say, all right, Josh, right here. I go, you're gonna cast right there, and he's gonna eat it about right there. I said, I'm gonna walk upriver. You fish here. And he goes, okay. So I start walking upriver. I look down, and he's like 10 feet below me. I was like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I just thought I'd fish up here. I was like, all right, if you're going to give it to me. So I walk down and I walk around and I go, watch this. And I tossed it in there. Unbeknownst to me, it was like a 28-pound steelhead that was living in there. And my bobber went down and I said, see, and I set the hook and I go, would have been your first steelhead. And a 28-pounder comes flying out of the water like this. And he goes, what the? I'm crapping my pants at this point, and I'm like, and this fish, typically bigger steelhead, they don't jump. They'll stay down. They kind of stay down and make pretty good run. This fish greyhounded and just started leaping up. Every leap, you're like, I'm going to lose this fish. I'm going to lose this fish. And cartwheeling like a dolphin. So I'm running upstream. I turn around. I start running downstream. He starts coming downstream. And it was kind of a turn or bleed situation where the bridge was there. And it's like, I can't go any further. And so I just clamped my thumb down and was like, turn or bleed, turn or bleed. And I get it in. The only reason I landed the fish was the hook straightened, but it had corkscrewed in the side of his mandible like this. And so it had like corkscrewed the barb and everything, just like a mass of flesh right in the corner of his mouth. It was the only reason I landed it because it was straight. Hook was straight as an arrow. It had broke the lead off the jig because it straightened out the lead the wire that was inside the lead. And I finally got it in. And I looked at him. I said, that would have been your first steelhead. You screwed that one off.
What did he say to that?
Oh, he was crapping his pants the whole time. He goes, I don't even care. I didn't ever see anything this big. This thing's massive. It's crazy. At that point, he was really, it was on the drive home and he was like, starting to set in. He was like, man, that would have been cool. I said, I don't think you would have landed that fish.
Hey, all you gotta do is listen, man.
Well, maybe you did him a favor because if that was his first fish, man,
he's ruined. Absolutely ruined. Yeah, he'd be absolutely ruined. Like, oh, this is easy.
I've only seen a hook straightened out one time, and that happened. So we were down on Copano Bay, and my brother hooked into a big ugly. I mean, this thing was freaking massive. And we were fishing on a pier, and we couldn't get it up, and we didn't have a gaff with us. And so my brother was fighting this fish. He brings it in. He can't get it up to the pier. So he asked me, my brother, and my niece, is like, can y'all help me get this? And so I'm holding my niece is holding the rod. I'm holding my brother's legs. My other brother is holding the belt, and he's leaning over trying to find a way to grab the steel leader and try to, pull this fish up. And he starts lifting this black drum out, and the hook just completely straightens out, and off in the water he goes. And he fought that fish for like 45 minutes. I felt so sorry for him.
Gosh.
This was a big fish, but that hook just straightened out. Yeah, it was nuts.
I've straightened 2 Gamakatsus on a number 2 Gamakatsus on a steelhead, and I recently straightened a bunch of treble hooks on some king mackerel a couple of years ago. I was trolling plugs out there, and good Lord, they just trashed them. I straightened the hooks out like instantly. I was like, well, shit, I gotta gear up a little bit for these.
That's insane. I've never caught any kind of mackerel, Spanish or kings.
We were out there jack fishing, and it was super calm, and I had my buddy David Foreman with me, and I motored up, and there was these little bait fish that typically the jacks aren't chasing. Like, I guess the kings really like them, but there's these little they're tiny little bait fish, very silvery. There's millions of them. And so I pulled up, and he's fly fishing over that. And I had brought my gear rod, and I have some plugs, big, huge plugs for catching kings in Washington. And I was like, these would work out here. And so I'm looking at him, and I just tossed randomly to the left while I'm watching him fish, waiting for something to come up and eat his fly. And I just happened to look over at see my plug just waggling there, and the waves are kind of roll like this. So I could just see my plug and kind of a hill coming towards me. And I see a 4-foot king mackerel come out and just smoke it. And I go, I don't even know what to do now. I've never caught one of these. So I was just like, was he going to stop? I don't know. And then you see him jumping 6 feet out of the air, way out there. And I got him about halfway to the boat, and it straightened out both sets of trebles. I came in with two trebles that were just like this. Like, fuck.
Dude, that's insane.
We trolled around a little bit out there, and I caught 4 more trolling, and I straightened the hooks out on every single one of them. And then one of them, he just cut off. You see the plug rod, and then it goes pink. And I was like, oh, what happened? I realized there's nothing there. He cut it straight off. I was like, dang, how do people catch these things, man? These are brutal.
That's insane. Yeah. I've never hooked up on any type of Spanish or king, but yeah, that sounds difficult. I remember one time I got completely spooled over there on Copano Bay. I don't know. I think I was either using cracked crab or I was using shrimp. And we're out at the end of the pier, and it was nighttime. The lights were on, and so we were fishing for little speckled trout right there in the lights. And then I was using the same rod that I was using. I had an ugly stick, little spinning gear, and I was like, let me throw some shrimp on there. It was either shrimp or crab. I threw it out just past the lights, and you know how sometimes you'll like, especially on a lighter rod, you'll see the tip go down, come up, go down, come up. Well, that time it went down. It never came up. And I was like, is there something on there? So I kind of filled the line. It felt taut, and I was just like, I set the hook, it was dead stop. So I set the hook again, it was dead stop, and then it just took off. And so I could hear my line screaming, so I was like, all right, I loosened the drag a little bit, and it was just going. Tighten the drag a little bit to slow it down and start screaming again. So I just kind of found the sweet spot, and it just went all the way and busted me off at the end. I was just like, I don't even know what it was, but it was something massive there in Copano Bay that just took every bit of line that I had.
Yeah.
Pissed me off.
There's some
I
big,
still don't know what it was.
big uglies. There's some big,
And
there's some
that's
big
what I was
gar
thinking
out
by
there
the way
too.
that the way it
I've
was
caught
acting.
some
I was
5
thinking
foot
it
gar
was
out there.
probably
Yeah.
really, dude. When
Yeah,
I was in Venice,
accidentally.
Louisiana, go ahead.
No, I was just saying accidentally. Yeah.
So when I was in Venice, Louisiana, we were out there fishing, and we were there for red specifically. We didn't find any fish. It was the first trip I'd ever taken down there, and we didn't see anything. And they got so much rain that the bay was brackish. I caught a largemouth bass out there. That's the only fish that was caught that whole trip. It was insane. But we come across some, like, I swear, 8-foot alligator gar, biggest freaking gar I've ever seen, and they're cruising 2, 3, 4, 5 foot away from the boat. And I'm just trying to slap whatever fly I can in front of them, just trying to piss them off. They wanted nothing to do with us. Didn't even care that we were there. They were just cruising around. It's like, I've never wanted to catch a fish that I could see so bad in my life. It was freaking huge.
Yeah, there's some monsters. Yeah, I think they come out of that river. That was when I caught them too, was when it was pissing rain. And so that Copano was pretty brackish. And we were dodging lightning storms and just had rods out. It just started crushing gar, and all of them were like 4 feet or bigger. It was like,
that's insane.
I couldn't even get pictures with them because I was like, I'm not going to get, that thing kind of flicked its jaw towards me. And I was like, I'm good. I don't need a picture. We're good. Because you're holding it like this and it starts bucking, and those scales are like armor. It's like, I don't need a picture that bad. It's not worth my life.
Right. Yeah, I've never caught an alligator gar. I've caught some speckled gar, or some spotted gar, and some long-nosed gar. And I actually caught a spotted gar that was probably 3-4 foot long not too long ago, but I've yet to get on an alligator gar. I want to, though.
Yeah, they are toothy. They eat really well. Actually, Chris Fowler is the one that brought some back straps off a gar. I think we ate it at somebody's house. It was really good.
Yeah, he was telling us about that, and he said everybody's like, there's no way that's a gar.
Yeah, he told me beforehand. I was like, I'm going to eat it. I don't care.
Yeah.
No, it'd be good.
Yeah, we're hoping. I mean, we haven't made any plans yet, so I mean, this may be just whatever. But we talked about having our anniversary party for our first year there, and weren't able to make it happen. So I'm thinking maybe we might be able to have especially since he has more space. Now we might be able to have our second year anniversary down at his place, and maybe he'll be able to cook up some gar for us if we're able to make that happen.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah,
I feel like it'd be awesome. That would be in April, so it'd be a good time to be down there. So
yeah.
I know he had mentioned that we could do it, but we haven't like actually set any plans yet. But might make that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm definitely due for a coast trip. It's been too damn long for me.
Right now it's good, man. I mean, the water temperatures are good. Big fish around. We've had some really high water lately. I'm assuming it's from the hurricane pushing a bunch of water over towards us. So been a little hit and miss finding them, but once you find them, I've gotten pretty good success. So, and they've all been pretty nice fish.
So I know that November is a good time because the reds start running, but are they running up in the flats, or is that kind of more out in the bay?
Well, that's right now. Yeah, it's right now.
Oh, okay.
I was just seeing a lot of bigger fish. Yeah,
I see.
So we've seen some 35+ inch fish and 8 inches of water.
Oh, wow.
No,
dude, that's insane.
High water. Yeah. They have access.
That would be a blast.
Yeah. We were pulling the shoreline.
About what time of year does that stop normally?
November, December. Yeah. When the water gets too
I see.
cold,
I see. That makes sense.
but you'll still
And
see
hopefully
them.
don't get a hard freeze.
Yeah. That shuts it all down there. I love the low water. I don't like the freeze.
Right.
The low
right.
water is some of the
The
craziest
fish kills
fishing you
there
can
are
possibly have.
absolutely insane.
Yeah.
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 Has the fishery bounced back from that really bad freeze? Like, what was it, 2-3 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I mean, the trout fishermen will probably know more than me about that because that affected them because they can't regulate their temperatures as well. But I'll tell you from my experience just in the wintertime, I've seen a lot of big trout in the wintertime on some of the flats that I pull when the water gets low. I've seen some 25, 28 inches, like some big trout, and they're in, 10 inches of water, so it's pretty easy to see them. But you'd have to
They
talk
go
to the
that
trout
shallow?
guides. Yeah, I've seen there's a couple flats that I go every year that when the water gets real low, it's almost guaranteed they're going to be there. Now, whether or not you can get them to eat flies, is a totally different thing. But because
Holy
trout are weird
smokes.
because they'll let you can practically run them over. Like they're like big bullies. But when they know you're there, I mean, you can paint a mustache on them and they just don't move like a silent statue. And then you almost run them over and they go, yeah. So you got to approach them
So,
from way out. Basically, make a cat. No, go ahead.
of all the fish that you've run into, that a person would run into on the flats, like trout, reds, black drum, sheepshead, things of that nature, what do you think's the most difficult to fool, to get to you?
Sheepshead. Sheepshead are so difficult. They're
Have
so
you cracked that
difficult.
code yet?
I just caught one the other day. It's not that. It's just you don't see a lot of them on the flats. You'll see a fair amount of little ones. They eat crabs that are, smaller than your pinky nail. So I'm not fishing crabs that small. So, I mean, if you actually made an effort or, Chris has a couple spots, if you knew where to catch them on the rocks, there's a couple spots to do that. You got to really go out and target them. And, Chris has a lot of success catching them. But it's just, he's specifically targeting them. But they can be really the asshole of the flats because they'll come right up on your fly and you're like, is he going to eat it? Did he eat it? Did he eat it? And then he's just hovering around it, just staring at it. And then you twitch it and he goes, no. And he comes off and you're like, you're so spastic. It's very weird. But yeah, I would say them.
Dude,
would be
who
the
do we
hardest.
have on that was sharing her successes with? What was it, Erica down in Florida?
I don't remember.
I want to say it was Erica Simmons out of Florida that was sharing with us that she has a lot of luck catching them at like docks and piers and stuff. That the sheep said,
Yeah.
well, oh no, she was talking about bow fishing them because they come up on and they come sideways and they're eating oysters and stuff off
Barnacles
the
and stuff,
pilings,
yeah.
and then she'll shoot them with her bow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was.
There's a video on YouTube I came across. There's this guy, I think he's a tattoo artist. He spent some time in Rockport and he found some sheep's head. And he said he was able to get them to eat because he loved throwing these little white crappie jigs with a little marabou tail. He put that under a strike indicator. And he says it works really good whenever you got some waves of chop going. Makes that little thing just kind of jig and dance. And he's like, yeah, man, believe it or not, nymphing for sheep's head,
believe
you
it.
can knock quite a few out.
I'm a firm
crazy.
believer that there's not a species on this planet of predatory fish that won't eat a properly presented jig. Because I mean, we catch steelhead, salmon, all of them on twitching jigs. You catch bass. I've caught reds, black drum. I think it's something about the movement of that tail kind of doing this. It just gets them going. I haven't come across fish that wouldn't eat one yet.
Yeah. There's just something about that undulating motion. Where it comes in and goes out like that. I mean, I use that a lot whenever I'm fishing pickerel over here. I'll reverse tie in some craft fur. And man, that's all I'll do is I'll just have a hook, reverse tie craft fur, throw it out there, and dude, they hammer it every time. Doesn't matter the color or anything like that. I like to make them pretty for me, but dude, it's just that motion. It pisses
You're a
them
fly
off.
tire, so I mean, you got to make them pretty.
Right, you got to. The fish don't care. It's all for us.
They don't care.
Right. So you said you do fly tying every Tuesday. Is that something you do? You just have a couple buddies come over to the house and tie up supplies, or?
Yep. There's a lot of I get a lot of messages from, not a lot, but enough messages from kind of new tires. And I remember what it was like when I was kind of new tying. Like, you're kind of embarrassed. You don't want to like go out and like show people how shitty you are, and so you're like, "Ah." But we don't really care, and it's like, it's nice. I wish I would have had a place to go to learn some of these techniques. And I definitely enjoyed learning them on my own too. That was fun. But um, I thought to kind of create something where we could have 4 or 5 people where I've had a couple young kids over, young kids. I'm an old guy now. They're in their 20s. They're a young kid. And just teach them, different things. They're eager to learn, showing them just a couple of the, ones that really work for us, and just staying consistent on that so that people can cycle and go and come when they want or not, or, whatever. So, and then me and Philip are typically here every Tuesday trying to fill some sort of box to do something. So yeah, I try to keep it pretty consistent.
That's awesome. Yeah, we talked about doing like a monthly fly tying live on Instagram, but we did it once and then haven't done it again. So
But
we
we'll
should
call
probably
it
do
the
that
one
again
and
at
done
some
show.
point. Right. And the worst part about it is we didn't even save the recording of it, so it's not like we even. It's like it never happened, really.
Yeah. Fail.
I didn't know how any of that worked and how to save it from alive and all that, because I'm not. I mean, I'm young, but I'm not the big social media guru here, and so
Yeah.
I put don't save or whatever, and so we have nothing to show of it.
Yeah, I can't even tell you the last time I tied a fly. I'm kind of in my fly tying room, like all those little things back there are my materials. But since I moved out here, I haven't touched a vise. I need to. I
That's
need
a
to get back to
sacrilege.
tying.
That's
I know,
considered
I
illegal in
know.
some countries.
Yeah.
As it should. As it should.
You could be
Yeah,
openly
I'm an
flogged for
outlaw.
that at the time of the square in the village.
Well, flog me and lock me up, because it's been too damn long since I tied a fly. I mean, hell. I think
Yeah.
I've tied maybe on 3 separate occasions in the past, 3-4 years. That's it. So it's yeah, dude.
I
So
get the itch, like,
we did the fly
I get the
tying
itch a
night,
lot.
right? And then I did
Mhm.
I tied once since then, or maybe it was before then, but around
Well,
that
you tied
time,
at the iron fly.
tied at the iron fly. And then other than those 3 times was when you were up here and the cat stole the materials.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
We tied a
Cats.
little bit that weekend that I went to your
Yeah. When you came up here and for my birthday weekend. So that's 5 times in the past. I've been divorced for 4 years now, and I was married when you were up here. So I've tied 5 times in the past over 4 years.
Damn.
Yeah, I need to change
That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah. Like I said, flog me and lock me up.
Yep.
Damn.
10 lashes for you, sir.
Right? Let them go. So, but yeah, well, I mean, you talked a little bit about your fly business and your guiding service and stuff. So how do people get a hold of you? How do people book you? What's the whole process on that for you?
Oh, yeah. You can go check out the website, hooksandhooch.com. That's hooks, A-N-D, and hooch. So it's not the and sign. It's actually spelled out, hooksandhooch.com.
Okay.
I've got all the information on there to book. You can book there, check my available days as well. Put down a deposit for a day. It's got my number there. Links to other things too, and pictures and things like that on there as well. Yeah. I'm
Awesome.
also my Instagram, Hooks and Hooch. You can go check that out. I've got lots of videos. I try to keep up on the social media as much as possible. And I have a Hooks and Hooch business page on Facebook as well. And I kind of post a lot of the same stuff on just updates on fishing, great pictures that I've taken. Because I became a professional photographer on accident because I was writing articles for magazines in Washington. And I was sending them cell phone pictures, and they were like, we can't do shit with this. I was like really embarrassed about it too, because they were like, your article's great, but we can't post this crap. And I was like, oh man, that kind of stung a little bit. That's some pretty good pictures. I'm like, these are awful. And I'm like, oh, I hurt a little bit. So at the time I had a friend who was really into starting getting his photography and his social media going. And he said, man, I got an extra camera you can borrow. And so went out, started taking some pictures for that, and then just fell in love with taking pictures. I absolutely love photography, and then bled over to in videography as well. So a lot of what I do on social media is just a lot of the pictures and videography that I'm trying to hone those skills. And I love posting about this because I just think when you get that picture, I mean, it really just, man, like you can just look at it and go, God, it's a great photo, like just shows the fish and, your scenery and what you're doing. And I've got so many great photos of all of my friends. And this as a photographer, there's very little of me. So I'm always the one behind the camera. So I feature a lot of that on there as well.
Yeah, dude, I've looked through quite a bit of your pictures, and I think my favorite one is a picture you have of someone lifting the redfish out of the water with like a storm behind. So it's all the dark clouds behind, and then you got the redfish coming up.
David Foreman.
Oh, dude,
that was Christmas Day in Port O'Connor. Yeah, Christmas Day. This last Christmas. Picture. Yeah, and it was funny because we had a break in the weather, and we ended up catching 2 fish right away. And I said, man, the weather looks really crappy, but I got out of the boat and I said, I think we're going to have a pretty good picture here though. And just that dynamic of that huge gray, because that's pretty rare in Texas to have. It looks like Washington is what it looked like. Just gray everywhere.
Really?
Storms. Yeah. That was David Foreman's fish. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was a freaking cool picture. I've only been down to the coast fishing one time. We went to Port Mansfield. And during a storm. I guess I should have finished that before I said where. I've only been down fishing at the coast one time after a storm, and it was Port Mansfield. We had a guy's trip planned, and we were going to be there, I want to say 5 days, and it was me, a guy that I used to live next to, and I lived in San Marcos, and then a group of his friends. And I didn't know that to get to the jetties at Port Mansfield, if you're not going via water, is like hours of unpacked sand. Like, it was nuts. But we pull in, and I don't remember where we were at. But we pulled in, it was like heavy storms, and it was heavy storms that morning when we left San Marcos, and we're like, they should blow out. And we're like, we may just have to get a hotel tonight, and then we'll just finish our trip tomorrow type of thing. So we got down there and we're like, guess we're going to see, what happens. And we ended up getting there like 4 hours later than we planned to originally. And so we went and got some tacos at a Mexican restaurant. We all had to take our celebratory shot of tequila because we made it down to the coast. And so we're just hanging out, waiting for the storm to pass by. We go and fill up, get ice, fill up the gas tank. And I remember taking a picture. It was just like a wall of black and then a little bit of blue. And it was just waiting for it to go. And we're like, well, we might as well just start heading down there because it's obviously moving on. And so we're driving, and it's still storming as we're driving through this sand. We get down there, there's like 3 hours of unpacked sand. We get down there, and we set up camp, and the next 4 days was just absolutely gorgeous. And the fishing was so good. That was the first time that I ever saw anybody catch a huge jack off the jetties. And I mean, it was damn near spooling him on a surf rod. I mean, it was just fighting, and he finally got it in, landed this huge jack. Then my buddy, like 15 minutes later, caught this huge redfish. It was damn good fishing right after the storm.
Yep, that paid off. Sometimes those don't pay off. Not pay off.
Yeah. Port Mansfield is a special place. I definitely need to make a trip down there. And so, funny story, I don't know if I've ever told this on the podcast or not. So we're sitting there, and we're camped out basically like maybe 50 yards from the jetty, and there's nobody out there. We'd passed a few people coming up, but there was nobody else camped out there. We're the only ones. And out of nowhere, we see a truck like come up on the other side of the channel on that jetty and start like flashing his lights and honking. And we're like, what the hell? Like, does somebody need help? Like, we're wondering what's going on. And then we didn't think nothing of it. We're like, whatever. So we're sitting around just, drinking beer, hanging out. And then out of nowhere, about 15 minutes later, we see this little 2-wheel drive, 2-door Ford Explorer that's like 12 different colors just come hauling ass up to the jetty. And we're like, how did they even get here? Like, my buddy drives a TRD Pro, and there was times where we almost got stuck. And this 2-wheel drive, 2-door Ford Explorer comes hauling ass up, comes up to this side of the jetty across the channel and starts flashing their lights. Next thing you know, we get a group of illegals running through our campsite, dive into that Explorer, and they just haul ass down the beach. It was nuts. But they literally ran directly like right next to our fire through our campsite and jumped in that Explorer and took off. I was like, well, that just happened.
Oh my gosh.
It was nuts.
South Texas, man.
Brian Barrera down south, he always jokes. He goes, you'll know when I quit guiding because I found the white lobster on the beach. He goes, there'll be signs.
Right.
Yeah. We call
Damn.
it the white
Yep.
lobster.
Hey, you'll find them, dude. There's been a couple times where I've seen on, I guess it was on Instagram, maybe on Facebook, of people just out there fishing and I got some. They bring it in. There's a brick of it. And it's like, oh crap. Like, what do you
Yeah.
do in that instant?
And you're like,
You know?
I think you got to mark it on your card. There's like a little punch, and you just
Where'd you
so
get this
Texas
punch
can
card? 'Cause
monitor.
I don't have
how
that
many
one.
they're getting, how many they're putting away. So if they're gonna
You get another one for
up the
free after you
hatchery
get 10
program
or
or something.
something. Is that how that works?
Yeah. After you get 10, they audit you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure that I put all the links for your Instagram and your Facebook page and your website
Cool.
and stuff
Thank
like
you.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely plug you on that. So, but is there anything else that you want to talk about? Any plans you got coming up? Anything new going on before we go ahead and close this out?
Oh man. Not that I can think of right now. I think coming into winter seasons, I'm pretty excited to start fishing winter again after fall closes out. I'm taking a trip to Washington January to finally go back. I've been back in 5 years. Go back and steelhead fish. And I think we're gonna take a warm trip here this next year because we've been kind of slacking on that. So I don't know if it's gonna be a big one, heavy on the wallet, or if it's gonna be more of a DIY trip. So, but yeah,
Right. Well, dude, stay safe on those trips. I can't wait to see the pictures. And like I said, I'll make
thanks,
sure I
guys.
link
Appreciate
everything in
it.
the description. So, and for those of y'all that are watching or
Appreciate it.
listening, we
Thanks.
appreciate y'all waiting to the end, and we'll catch y'all later.
This has been Wildlife Outdoors. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook at Wildlife Outdoors and on Instagram at wild.life.outdoors. Let's go live life on the wild side.